The depths of the ocean have always terrified me. A vast alien world that we barely understand, where the light fades, shadows twist into monsters, and anything could be lurking, unseen. It's a place that stirs something primal in us, a fear of the unknown. So in this video, join me for an exploration of deep sea terrors across various pieces of media, as well as history and mythology. In Subnautica, you play as the sole survivor of the Aurora, a spaceship that crash-landed on the alien ocean planet 4546b. Stranded and entirely alone, you scavenge to survive, while descending into a hostile and mysterious world filled with all sorts of terrifying sea monsters. And the ocean in Subnautica isn't just a setting, it's the game's main antagonist. The shallow waters at the start feel safe enough, but the deeper you go, the more the game strips away that sense of security. The small submarine becomes your only safe haven, but it can't protect against all the monsters that dwell in the depths. Darkness becomes your constant companion, and you're surrounded by alien creatures that either ignore you, try to kill you, or worse, lurk just out of sight. The Leviathans, the game's apex predators, are massive, fast, and terrifying, so I will now briefly go over 3 of these monsters. The Reaper Leviathan is a pure killing machine, almost entirely muscle with an extremely small brain, leaving it with no sense of morality or hesitation. It uses echolocation to hunt, meaning if you can hear its roar, it can already see you. The Ghost Leviathan is a glowing, translucent giant built for the abyss. Its hammer-shaped skull is used to ram threats with devastating force. If threatened, they can unleash bursts of speed, making escape nearly impossible. The largest of the Leviathans is the Sea Dragon, and it happens to be a carnivore. Its population is critically low, likely in single digits, but what it lacks in numbers, it makes up for in power. As an apex predator, the Sea Dragon hunts even other Leviathans, boiling them alive in volcanic waters before consuming them. Leviathans also have a long historical presence in the world. In the Bible, the Leviathan is a monstrous sea serpent, a creature so vast and powerful it defies comprehension. In the Book of Job, it's described as a beast with impenetrable scales, fire-breathing jaws, and a strength that only God can subdue. Another monster of similar stature is Jormungandr, the world serpent from Norse mythology. Cast into the sea by Odin, Jormungandr grew so massive it encircled the entire world, biting its own tail in a cosmic Ouroboros. It's a creature of inevitability, tied to the Norse apocalypse, Ragnarok. When Jormungandr releases its tail, the end of the world begins. Underwater is a movie about a group of explorers in an underwater base that starts to collapse and explode due to the awakening of a huge monster that looks a lot like Cthulhu, so I will just refer to it as that. Despite the plot being pretty mid, and in my opinion missing the tone,
Emily, stop it!
This movie has some of the best spooky underwater monster scenes, so that's what I'll focus on. The first monster we get to see is a small, fleshy creature that they find inside one of the dead crew members. They approach the corpses, and their bodies look like they're covered in some sort of strange algae, and then the thing jumps into the camera. They analyze it, and it looks really gross, very similar to the baby xenomorph from Alien. There are then bigger ones, almost humanoid minions that sort of look like skinwalkers. And these probably have the scariest scenes as they go in and out of the darkness, preparing to attack. You never know how many there are because it is so dark down there and easy for them to be invisible. They look like a modern version of the creature from the Black Lagoon. They have webbed hands and their way of attack is almost snake-like. Their mouths enlarge as they swallow the person whole. The movie also has some pretty effective scenes of claustrophobia, where the characters are stuck with limited movement in their scuba suits as they get low on oxygen, have to dodge debris, and run from monsters. In some scenes you can hear the rapid breathing inside the helmet as all these terrors surround them, but all they can do is remain calm, in order not to make things even worse. I was pretty immersed in the movie while I was watching, and I definitely felt uncomfortable during these scenes. And finally, we get to the reveal of Cthulhu, which is absolutely terrifying. The main character launches a flare into the darkness, and only a portion of its figure is slowly revealed, its true size still unknown. And then it steps back into the abyss. It gets a good amount of screen time after this, but each new scene kind of strips away its significance, and at the end they even manage to blow it up. Speaking of Cthulhu, I would like to now mention its original tale, The Call of Cthulhu. Published in 1928, this story introduced us to one of the most famous and influential sea monsters of all time. The story has a bit of a build-up, but for the purpose of this video, I will only focus on the part that takes place in the ocean. So the crew of the ship Enma have an encounter with some pirates, after which they stumble upon a strange island. This island turns out to be the sunken city of R'lyeh, the home of Cthulhu, which rises and sinks periodically. The city is filled with massive, oozy statues and non-Euclidean geometry. The crew opens a monolithic door and a slopping sound emerges. Cthulhu then squeezes through the passage and emerges at the surface. He's described as a massive, grotesque creature with a humanoid body, bat-like wings, and an octopoid head filled with tentacles. The thing cannot be described. There is no language for such abysms of shrieking and immemorial lunacy, such eldritch contradictions of all matter, force, and cosmic order. The crew members that survive the emergence run to the boat and begin to run away, Cthulhu chasing them through the water. And they actually ram the boat into its head, but it doesn't even faze it. And everyone who manages to survive this encounter goes completely mad afterwards. A slightly less famous Lovecraft sea monster is Dagon. This was actually the first story I read from H.P. Lovecraft, and it was a perfect introduction. It's short and sweet. I recommend reading it if you've never tried. The story is about a man who is stranded at sea and stumbles upon a strange, barren island filled with carcasses of fish and other strange creatures. As he explores, he eventually reaches a monolith covered in hieroglyphs of fish and something that he doesn't recognize. And then all of a sudden, Dagon shows up. Then suddenly I saw it, with only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface. The thing slid into view above the dark waters. Vast, Polyphemus-like, and loathsome. It darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith, about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Unlike Cthulhu, this monster doesn't seem as menacing, it's just there hugging the monolith. But this is almost more terrifying, since its mere existence was enough to traumatize the narrator to his core, and he actually jumps out of a window at the end of the story, because of how scared he was. And I mean, just imagine, being stranded at sea with no human contact for days, and all of a sudden seeing a creature bigger than any whale emerge from the water. Just witnessing that would terrify me to my core, and I'd probably jump out of a window too. There is another story called Shadow over Innsmouth that takes place in a fishing village where everyone is half fish and half human because of their worship of Dagon. It doesn't take place in the ocean, but it's a very cool story that connects to Dagon in the Lovecraft universe, so I felt I should mention it briefly. Now, let's explore a monster from the SCP Foundation. This is a fictional organization dedicated to containing and studying anomalous objects, creatures, and phenomena that defy the natural order. It's like a mix between top-secret government agencies and urban legends, with entries ranging from harmless oddities to outright apocalyptic threats. One of the most infamous entities in their ocean department is SCP-3000. This entity resembles a giant eel, lurking in the inky depths of the Bay of Bengal, and it's theorized to be between 600 and 900 kilometers long. It is sedentary and only moves its head during feeding, during which it eats humans. It excretes a vicious substance known as Y909, a critical component in advanced Foundation amnestics. This substance, harvested through the ATSAC protocol, is used for memory erasure compounds. The creature is a Class 8 cognito hazard, meaning proximity or direct observation induces severe psychological effects, including paranoia, memory distortion, and headaches. Many exposed individuals experience existential dread, often perceiving the entity as a harbinger of their own insignificance and mortality. These effects have been documented since the creature's discovery in 1971, following the mysterious disappearance of fishing boats in the bay. SCP-3000 is currently in a hibernation state, but even in sleep, its presence is suffocating. Arguably the most famous underwater movie, this one doesn't have a huge monster that wreaks havoc, but rather an alien civilization living in the depths. The story follows a group of oil rig workers and Navy SEALs investigating a mysterious submarine crash deep below the surface. And the team eventually comes across alien life. The aliens possess the ability to manipulate water and live in a massive glowing city in the bottom of the ocean. Their submarines are sleek, bioluminescent, and unlike anything humans have ever seen. And the aliens' technology appears to be a blend of mechanical and organic elements. Although this isn't a horror movie, it's unsettling to imagine how different and vastly superior these creatures are, not just in their abilities, but in their understanding of the ocean, which remains so alien to us even today. They say only 5% of the ocean is explored, so we really don't know where the boundary is between what's fiction and what's real when talking about those depths. In fact, these underwater aliens in this movie remind me of those sea UFO reports. The claims of UAPs emerging from the ocean and showing physics-defying capabilities. There are also those reports of mysterious orbs rising from the water and flying. And this stuff is nothing new, but the fact that it's even being talked about in the context of our real world definitely makes you wonder what all could be hiding down there. Speaking of real-world stuff, back in the day, sightings of strange shapes in the water often fueled tales of sea monsters. These sightings were likely encounters with oarfish, giant squids, or whales, but the fear of such creatures persisted. An interesting entry in medieval bestiaries is the Aspidoshalon, a turtle or whale so massive that sailors mistook its back for an island. When they would land and light fires, the creature would submerge, dragging them underwater. This mythical creature taps into the fears of many sailors, trusting the ocean to hold still, only for it to betray you. And for the end, I have a story from when I played the MMO Archeage. This may seem like a strange entry for this video, but this game's ocean terrified me to my core. So me and a friend played Archeage back in 2018, and in case you didn't know, Archeage is a very dead game, even back then. Which kind of made it more fun to explore because for some reason, dead multiplayer games seemed appealing to us. And this game has a huge ocean that you can entirely cross with a boat. It's all one big map, not instanced like most other games. And this ocean has a world boss called the Leviathan, which is impossible to kill without a huge team, which we could never get, but we were very curious as to see what it looked like. Since we didn't have money to get a real boat, we ventured on a tiny rowboat in search of this monster, and it took hours of just rowing through nothing but water, prepared to hear it or see it breach the surface at any moment. And then finally, in the middle of nowhere, we heard its roar. The Leviathan grazed the surface, breaking the boat on impact, and we found ourselves deep underwater without the little sense of security the rowboat gave us. We could no longer see the monster, but then it appeared from the depths, and it ate us. I was pretty immersed in this game back then, so this thing really terrified me, more than any other movie or story. And as always, thank you for watching. Finals are finally over, so I will have more time for videos now. The next one should be out on the 18th. I would like to keep this format if it works, where I have a common topic like thalassophobia or cosmic horror, and I share media that depicts it. As a matter of fact, I am planning to talk about creepy Christmas stuff for the next video. So if you have any recommendations for that, let me know in the comments. And until next time.